Hello everyone and welcome back to week 4. I hope everyone had a restful weekend. We're going to continue our talks on the Métis and we're specifically going to be looking at the Red River Rebellion. Now last week we had some kind of little articles. We had an article and a video talking about the Métis and what's happening around the Red River. Now we're going to actually talk about the rebellion and kind of the results of that. So this right here is just a map of the Red River Settlement. Now the Red River Settlement is located in Manitoba, kind of southern Manitoba, what is going to be Manitoba, because pretty much at this point Manitoba is not a province. There's a little area kind of Métis who are living there who are both English and French speaking. So you all already know this information. Who were the Métis? These were basically the term Métis was kind of specifically used for the French fur traders who married indigenous women, and their children kind of started becoming this separate identity. They weren't entirely First Nations and they weren't entirely French colonists. They were somewhere in between. And kind of the term Métis, as we had from the assignment before, roughly means mixed in French. So between the 1860s and 1870s, there was thousands of Métis living in the Northwest, mostly in southern Manitoba around the Red River. Half of the Métis were English-speaking and half were French. Both were farmers, but the French Métis still hunted buffalo. That was kind of part of their kind of staple food. So if you remember from the article last week, things started to change when Lord Selkirk bought basically some land from the Canadian government. He got the Selkirk's grant and decided, I'm going to move here and I'm going to bring a bunch of people from Scotland to come and live in this area around the Red River. The problem is most of that land was already settled by the Métis. So what ends up happening in 1869, Canada was basically purchased Rupert's Land from the Hudson's Bay Company, and surveyors start coming in basically looking at the land that the Métis had to get it ready for not just these Scottish settlers, but the Canadian colonists who wanted to start moving further west. So the Métis are getting a little bit scared. There's a bunch of people now starting to move onto their land, and they're nervous. So they form the National Committee of Métis. And one of the kind of interesting gentlemen in the middle of this was a gentleman by the name of Louis Riel. You can actually see him in the middle of this picture. So what ends up happening, October 1869, William McDougall, the lieutenant governor of the area, arrives in Red River. The Métis pretty much stop him from entering Fort Garry, and they take control of the fort and the surrounding area because they don't like that McDougall is just kind of do it as he pleases without really consulting them. Then the Métis form what is referred to as a provisional government, and this happened in 1869. So the provisional government is basically a government that kind of is created and put in place. It's a temporary government. It takes over until a final government is put into place. The Métis are starting to organize themselves like a government, and they put Louis Riel in charge. So he becomes kind of leader of this provisional government of Métis because they want to start kind of essentially fighting back against what McDougall's doing. So the Métis essentially create this Bill of Rights, and what it would mean is that the Métis got to keep their culture. This included both French and English in the education and law. They get to keep the rights to land, and the federal government would negotiate treaties with the First Nations in the area. So there's a lot of stuff that it's doing. It's pretty progressive when you think about it, is the fact that it's acknowledging the land, it's acknowledging who's already there. But the problem with all of this is the fact that some people in the Red River area wanted it to be an English-speaking province. They didn't like that there was French-speaking in there. We've got this conflict of the English and the French. So in 1870, there were plans to attack the provisional government. Word got out that there was a group of people that were looking to do this. These are mostly Canadian colonists, so those people coming in. And so they get captured, and Louis Riel throws them in jail. And he agrees to release them on the promise that they leave the Red River Settlement or they obey the rules of the provisional government. What ends up happening is some of those men escape. One of them was by the name of Thomas Scott. Thomas Scott ends up escaping, and he threatens to kill Louis Riel. So by Métis law, pretty much any law. If you threaten to kill someone of the government, that's considered a serious offense, and Thomas Scott was put on trial. He was found guilty and was executed by firing squad in 1870. Some people say that it was Louis Riel who killed Thomas Scott. He did. He was just the one that gave the order. I also love this lovely drawing because they make it look like some barbaric event where some guy like point blank shot Thomas Scott. That's probably not what exactly happened, but you can probably see this isn't gonna go well for the Métis. So Ottawa was kind of split on this. Half of them wanted Louis Riel punished because he just killed a colonist, and they were not okay with that. But the French Canadians supported Riel. They saw him defending French culture, even though that's kind of not what he was necessarily fully defending, but that's what they kind of saw. And John A. Macdonald decided not to arrest Riel because he wanted still the vote of the French Canadians. He wanted to kind of be somewhere in the middle. So he was looking for a more peaceful solution of how to quietly make this go away. So what ends up happening is Macdonald and the Métis work out an agreement, and the Manitoba Act is created, in which the province of Manitoba is created in 1870. So what ends up happening is a couple years go by, we get a new prime minister. This is Alexander Mackenzie. There is threats to Louis Riel's life. You can imagine why. So Alexander Mackenzie agrees to grant Riel pardon for the stuff of the Red River, but he has to leave Canada for 5 years. So Louis Riel agrees, and he scuttles off to the United States, because that seems to be where everyone goes. So here's a little picture of kind of what Manitoba looked like. So you see a little square at the bottom? That's what Manitoba was. It was a tiny little square around the Red River settlement. That was Manitoba for quite some time. But what ends up happening is, so Louis Riel leaves, things kind of sort of quote-unquote quiet down, but a lot of those Métis are not particularly happy because more settlers are coming in, so they're starting to move further away from the settlers, closer to the buffalo, so they're moving further west. And there'll be another rebellion. You can actually see kind of where the light green area is. There's going to be another rebellion that's going to happen in the same issue. So we're going to talk about that kind of next week. Okay, so for your assignment, who was Louis Riel? You are going to use your notes as well as the article that I'm attaching to the assignment. So read through it. I want you to come up with 10 points about Louis Riel. So things like his birth, his death, significant impact on Canada, what was his education, how was he involved in the rebellion, things like that. And it can be point 4. I'll show you an example. So this is the first part of the assignment. There's a lot of reading and things like that. So this first part, I don't want you to necessarily read through the entire thing. I simply want you to skim. Pick out only the most important pieces of information. So if we look at the first part, it says that he's a Métis leader. He founded Manitoba, central figure in the Red River and Northwest Rebellion. He led 2 popular Métis governments, central bringing blah, blah, blah. Was initially dismissed as a rebel by Canadians, though many sympathized, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we've got a bunch of stuff in there, but if we're looking through, so we know a couple things. He was a Métis leader. He founded Manitoba. So we have founder of Manitoba. The fact that he was a figure in the Red River and Northwest Rebellion. We have when he was born and when he died. We also have, so in early life, it says where he was born, so 1844. Then we have his father was a businessman and politician, organized the large resistances. So from the beginning of his formal education, Riel emerged as a standout student at 13. The Catholic clergy of the Red River Parish identified him as a strong candidate for priesthood. Yeah, so Louis Riel actually, if he didn't take the path he was going to take, he was going to become a Catholic priest. A little fun fact. He also acquired a passion for poetry. He also he met a young woman by the name of Marie-Julie, oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher her last name, Gernon, and they became quietly engaged. However, her parents were super racist and refused to allow her to marry a Métis man, and the engagement was broke off. Yeah, so that's a little fun fact. Okay, so if you look on your sheet, you'll notice kind of down below, there's a picture of Louis Riel. You're basically just going to do like bullet points around him. However you choose to make that look, it's up to you. So we took some of that information. I didn't do all of it. You're going to have to do the rest on your own. But we do have the fact he was an educated man and when he was born. There's a lot of other information that you can get from the article or from the PowerPoint. And then next week, we're going to continue on and look at the second rebellion that Louis Riel was a part of. Awesome. Thanks, guys.